fund development, we tend to see ourselves as donor relationship managers. So we're really in the business of donor relations. Here at the American Red Cross, we are responsible for exposing the public or sharing with the public our various lines of service and then raising funds to make sure that we're able to deliver those services.
The overall purpose of the fundraisers at the American Red Cross is to keep the important work and the mission of the Red Cross visible in communities, to be the front-facing group that says this is the great work that the volunteers are doing, this is why we need your support, this is how you can contribute. It's to keep the mission and the work forefront in the community at all times.
Disaster relief, and that is a large component of the American Red Cross humanitarian mission. Relief is our response to the small airplane accident that has happened at your municipal airport. It's a response to the train accident that has occurred. It's a response to a flood. It's a response to a large-scale event like a superstorm Sandy that's affected multiple states simultaneously, millions of people. But disaster relief is not only that big stuff, it's everything else. So from a fundraising standpoint, the Red Cross must be able to afford to deliver these services. So we cannot rely on waiting for a big event to occur, because important events occur every day. These small disasters are big disasters to an individual and or a family. And we are there for them. So we must fundraise to make sure that we have the resources and the talent, the trained talent, to be able to respond as needed to affect the problems that these families are experiencing or individuals are experiencing. So there's a disaster relief. When it's a large-scale emergency, the Red Cross responds in a big way. When it's a house fire, we respond equally vigorously in terms of our outreach and communication to the public, because house fires happen every day, all over the nation, and we respond when we need to. Now, other lines of service, the other significant, there are 5 lines of service. Service to the armed forces. That amazes me, and it even, I was educated in the first week that I started working for the Red Cross regarding service to the armed forces. I knew who Clara Barton was. History tells you a lot of things, but I had no idea the depth of what the Red Cross societies, the Red Cross, International Red Cross, and Red Cross movements, what that meant and where it started. The Red Cross was born on the battlefield. It was not born in response to a flood. It was born on the battlefield. The humanitarian mission of the Red Cross was born on the battlefield. And the American Red Cross has never forgotten it. So our service to the armed forces is a significant component of what we do as we work with our service members and their families in providing emergency communication and assistance with injured soldiers or warriors, and supplying just information in a clearinghouse fashion to those that are being enrolled, that are enlisting into one of our branches. So that's an important piece of what we do, and everything we do there is free. We even train dental hygienists and certified nurse assistants. It's free. So we have to donate. We have to work with donors to get these services underwritten, and we will do that. So outreach around our service to the armed forces is an important component of our fundraising activity. Preparedness, health and services, the first aid and CPR and swimming lessons. There's a cost associated with the delivery of that, but it's a cost recovery model. And it's important that we be able to provide this type of exposure. Every person should know how to swim in this country. Every person. That would reduce the number of drownings significantly. and we have led that charge since the advent of that concept. The American Red Cross, it was actually born through a volunteer, the American Red Cross, that the United States should be waterproof. So our blood services, the American Red Cross provides 40% and growing of the nation's blood supply. So we do that through, obviously, collection of blood donations, and we do that through an infrastructure that we use to be able to, we use an infrastructure to be able to do blood collection, and those are often the blood mobiles. So fund development is involved in that because of our ability to find underwriters to help us to buy and supply blood mobiles. And international services, that really ties back to the origins of of the Red Cross. Again, things that you just don't know about. The Geneva Convention are the principles of the Red Cross. Things that people don't quite understand. Geneva Convention being the body of law that helps to oversee actions between governments during war. But from that has come the international humanitarian law services that we talk about. So if the American Red Cross, or if the Red Cross was born on the battlefield, that humanitarian cause was born on the battlefield, taking a neutral stance during that event. There's something about what it means to be a human, to express themselves in a humanitarian way, and the humanitarian law is an incredible component of that, particularly because as it's exposed to our youth understand that there is a civil way to interact with people who are different. There's a civil way to do that. But also through the international services, we are very involved in vaccine programs, particularly measles these days. We were involved in, well, I won't go there, but yeah. So that's an important component of the Red Cross too. And fundraising is an important piece. For $1, we can save a life of a child overseas. It's from measles for $1. So it's incumbent upon us fund development staff to be able to raise money to save lives across the world. Disasters do not care about the clock. They don't care about your watch or the time. When it happens, and you could be involved in your response starting middle of the night, and it can go on for long blocks of hours. So the reality is that the way the American Red Cross responds is that we are going to be there for those that are impacted, and we do it in a number of different ways. In terms of raising disaster fundraising element of that response, it is important for the Red Cross to be able to cover the cost of that particular disaster relief effort. So what we do is we very quickly reach out to our donor base. So there's often a lot of communication going out to the public about the response itself and how people can be involved. Now, so involvement is a couple different things too. As a disaster relief responder or somebody who's part of this relief effort, we receive not just monetary donations, but we also receive in-kind donations. The Red Cross tends to steer clear of taking in clothing, and we opt to partner with organizations that are better equipped to deal with that, but we still bring in things like water. And I say bring in, the community is always so generous. You'd be amazed at what is made available to those that are being affected by an emergency. So as communities respond, they tend to offer things like water, clothes, of which again I spoke about that, and other in-kind products. So it could be the sanitation products. It could be, I just recently was reaching out to a dentist during an emergency, and the first thing that they responded to was, here, do they need toothbrushes and toothpaste and everything? We can provide your shelter with all that they need in them. So you'd be surprised what kind of in-kind donations make their way into the office to be able to be provided to those affected by the emergency. Now, we also, as part of that outreach to the community, we're making a lot of phone calls. So there's often the occasion wherein, depending on the size of the emergency and the interest in it from the media corps, there are telethons. There are organizations that will actually hold some form of public outreach, and we need volunteers to operate during those periods of time, wherein you sit and you take phone calls and you answer questions about the relief effort and how people, again, can be involved through monetary donation, through in-kind donation, and even through their time, their own personal sweat equity. And following that, once the emergency has been addressed and people have started back towards normalcy, there's follow-up. There's always the thank you to those donors that have taken time to care about their neighbors and to provide resources, again, whether it be money or an in-kind product, to that individual. So we want to thank them. And we find volunteers a very, very important component of being able to reach out into the community and thank the community for their support.
Disaster fundraising is an extremely fast-paced time for fundraisers in the American Red Cross. There's a lot happening. We get a lot of calls from the community, and we want to make sure that we're there to answer any questions and thank them for their gifts. And then we also go out and we're working very closely with the community to let them know of the items and things that are needed to make our sheltering successful. So it's a very high energy, fast-paced time and a very exciting time.
So special events are different every single time, and they're different across chapters. But one thing is for sure, that Red Cross truly relies on the help of volunteers throughout a process. Whether it be a large-scale event like a gala or a smaller fundraiser, we rely on volunteers from the beginning to the end and even afterwards. That being said, a volunteer can be involved in the planning of a gala. They can be involved in soliciting donations. They can be involved in a gala program. The night of the gala, they can be a greeter. They can also be involved in the setup, and they can also be involved in the breakdown and our communication with donors after the event. So it's really, really crucial that we have volunteers and their support throughout the process of any type of special event, even though they're different across the board.
There are lots of ways for volunteers to get involved in development in administrative roles. For example, we need people to be available to donors. We have donor relations being available on the phone, being available within the department, to the staff, just being able to help with donor relations like phone calls, but also cards, sending handwritten notes. It means so much more for a donor to hear from a volunteer than from a staff member. Just hearing the stories that volunteers can tell, and even if you're not the one who is experiencing stories out in the field, getting stories from disaster volunteers or health and safety or service to armed forces volunteers and helping us share those with the generous donors who are making those things happen is critical.
Well, the American Red Cross, we're very lucky. We have an extremely committed board here in the Central South Texas region. And our executive directors spent a lot of time working in the communities to help identify really talented and committed board members to join with us. And the role of development is to work with board members to help them identify donors that want to support the work of the American Red Cross. We often do visits with board members. We work with the board members so that they can often make, you know, one-on-one thank you calls and visits with some of the donors that have really gone above and beyond the call of duty in their gifts and in their support of the work that we do. And so it's, you know, we sort of provide that guidance to help them be front-facing with the community in a really powerful way. And it's really exciting, and it means a lot to a donor when a board member takes that time to pick up the phone and make a call, or when the executive directors, you know, schedule time to visit. It means a lot to the donors to have that sort of personal thank you time with folks that appreciate what they're doing. Well, if there are volunteers who would like to be on the board of directors, contacting the local chapter's executive director, the volunteer staff is also very welcoming and would be more than happy to make an initial visit or talk to an interested board member who wants to serve. A lot of our volunteers are donors to the American Red Cross, and that to me is such an important double whammy, because not only are they giving their time and their incredible talent, but then they're putting their resources behind their work as well. And so that is always appreciated. And I think to a community where a person's volunteering their time and their resources, there's just not a stronger statement of support and credibility that they can give about their commitment to the American Red Cross.